3 months went by. Not quietly, not smoothly, not the way 3 months go by when a new leader arrives and slides into a department like water finding its level. These 3 months went by the way a renovation goes, with noise and disruption and dust and moments when things look worse before they begin to look better, and with the constant low pressure of a person at the center of it all who will not be moved, and will not be rushed, and will not pretend the job is easier than it is. Nadia Oz sat in her office on the 92nd morning of her tenure and read through the latest figures from the Eastern Precinct. The overtime overrun had dropped from 140% to 68%, not solved, not where it needed to be, but moving in the right direction for the first time in over a year. The internal review cases, 2 of the 3 had been resolved. The third was still open, but it was open for legitimate reasons now rather than administrative delay, and it was moving, which was different. The community complaint rate from the 2 precincts she had prioritized was down 11% from the same period in the prior year. Not a triumph, but a number that was going in the right direction, and a number that had not been going in any direction for 18 months before she arrived. She put the report down. She picked up her tea. Outside her window, Millbrook moved through a gray autumn morning. A woman walked past on the pavement below with a yellow umbrella. A bus pulled away from the stop on the corner. A dog being walked by a man in a green coat paused on the pavement and sat down resolutely, as though it had decided that the morning was no longer worth continuing. She watched the dog for a moment. Then she turned back to her desk. There was a knock at the door. Claire, who had formally transferred from the mayor's office to serve as her department assistant 6 weeks in, opened it and looked in with the expression she used for things that were not emergencies, but were worth interrupting for. A journalist from the Millbrook Observer is downstairs. She was hoping for 15 minutes for the 100-day profile piece. I told her I'd check. What's her name? Paula Rigby. Send her up. 20 minutes. Claire nodded and went back out. She had agreed to the interview request 2 weeks ago because she had understood immediately what it was and what it was for. A new appointment, a city that was watching, a department that had been without leadership long enough to create questions in the public mind. A 100-day profile was a standard piece of accountability journalism, the kind she had always been willing to sit for because a department that will not answer questions in a reporter's notepad will face larger and less comfortable questions eventually. She straightened the files on her desk, not for tidiness. She was not a woman who straightened for company. She did it because 2 of the files had shifted and she preferred them aligned. Paula Rigby arrived at 7 minutes past 10. She was somewhere in her late 30s, with the practical clothing of a person who covers local politics and municipal administration, the kind of beat that requires you to be ready to walk a lot of corridors at short notice. She carried a recorder and a notebook. She did not have a photographer with her, which meant the Observer was running the piece with the official department photograph, which suited Nadia just fine. They shook hands. Nadia gestured to the chair across the desk. Paula sat down and clicked on the recorder. "Do you mind?" she asked. "Not at all." Paula opened her notebook. She asked a few questions that Nadia answered concisely. Staffing changes, budget timelines, community engagement program. The internal review case closures. She answered each one directly. She did not expand beyond the question unless there was something adjacent to it that the public deserved to know. Paula made notes. She asked a follow-up on the Eastern Precinct. She asked about the community complaint figures. She asked about the relationship with the city council, which was a question with edges to it that Nadia recognized and navigated without appearing to navigate it. Then Paula looked down at her notebook and was quiet for a moment, the pause of a journalist who has found a page she had written something on earlier and is deciding whether to use it. "I want to ask about something that happened in the first week," she said. It has circulated quite a bit in the department, and I want to give you the chance to address it directly. Nadia waited. There's an account of an incident in the administrative building on your first day, involving Deputy Chief Hart, in the parking garage. The office held the quiet of a room in a well-insulated building on a gray morning. Outside, a car passed on the street below. Nadia looked at Paula across the desk. "What do you want to know about it?" she said. Paula glanced at her recorder. How did it feel? Nadia was quiet for a moment, not because she did not have an answer, because the answer deserved to begin in the right place. "Marcus," she said, "the receptionist downstairs." Paula looked up from her notebook. "He didn't offer me the visitor sheet when I arrived," Nadia said. "He offered it to two men who came in after me. He arranged coffee for them. He told me the conference room might be ready and asked me to wait. He was not unkind about it. He wasn't doing any of it deliberately. He looked at a woman in a plain gray hoodie carrying a folder, and his brain finished the sentence for him before I had said two words." She paused. That's what the lobby was. That's what the parking garage was. People finishing sentences before the information arrives. It's not malice most of the time. It's habit. It's the accumulation of what a person has been taught to expect, without anyone sitting them down and teaching it to them explicitly. That's actually what makes it harder to address than deliberate hostility, because a hostile man knows he is being hostile. A man whose brain finishes sentences for him doesn't always know he's doing it until someone makes the sentence available to him. Paula had stopped writing. She was listening. "Did it bother you?" she asked. Nadia set down her tea. "What bothered me," she said, "was that none of it surprised me." She let the sentence sit. She did not add to it immediately because it did not need addition. It had its own weight. 22 years, she said. You walk into a lot of rooms. After a while you stop being surprised, which is both an advantage and a loss. The advantage is that you don't waste energy on the surprise. The loss is the thing underneath the surprise that surprise was covering, which is that the surprise should not be necessary. That a woman of 51 with 2 decades of service and a direct appointment from the governor should be able to walk into a building carrying her credentials and not have to wait for the room to catch up to reality. Paula said in Ronald Hart. Nadia was quiet for a moment longer this time. "Ronald Hart is one of the better deputies I've worked with," she said. "I want to say that clearly. He knows this department. He knows the precinct structures, the personnel dynamics, the history of decisions that brought the department to where it was when I arrived. That knowledge is genuinely valuable. A person who carries useful knowledge and a set of assumptions that need updating is a person worth working with, because the assumptions can change. The knowledge doesn't leave." Paula wrote something down. "He made incorrect assumptions about who I was," Nadia continued. "In the lobby, in the conference room, in the parking garage, and then the information arrived and the assumptions were corrected. What a person does with that correction tells you everything you need to know about their actual character." "What did he do with it?" "He came to work on Monday," she said. "He brought what I asked for. He sat in the briefing room and he listened. He has not in 90 days made the same assumptions again. He does his work. He is often the first in the building in the morning." She looked at Paula directly. "That matters, not because it fixes everything about Friday, but because it is the honest answer to your question." Paula nodded slowly. She turned a page in her notebook. "Do you think the incident changed him?" "I think the incident informed him," Nadia said. "Whether it changed him is something only he knows." She said nothing further on Hart. She had given him the full answer he deserved, which was one that was honest in both directions, and she had given it without drama, which was how she gave everything. Paula asked a few more questions. The role of women in senior police leadership, whether she had faced this kind of reception before. What she would say to a young woman in law enforcement who was navigating similar rooms. To that last question, she thought for a moment. "Decide what you are going to do before you walk in," she said. "Not what you are going to say, what you are going to do, the work, the specific, actual, concrete work you have come to do, and then do it regardless of the temperature of the room, because a room's temperature is temporary. The work is what stays." Paula clicked off the recorder. She looked at Nadia with the look of a journalist who has covered her beat long enough to know when she has the real piece and when she has the performed one. "Thank you," she said. "Of course." Claire showed Paula out. Nadia heard the door to the outer office open and close. She heard the muffled sound of the elevator arriving at the third floor. Then the building returned to its ordinary sounds, the low hum of the heating system, the distant movement of the shift changing below, someone's phone ringing twice and stopping. She picked up the Eastern Precinct report again. She turned to the staffing projection for the next quarter and read through the numbers with the same attention she gave every set of numbers, the attention that does not relax when the numbers look better, because numbers that look better than last month can still be wrong, and wrong numbers left unquestioned are the beginning of the next problem. She made 2 notes in the margin. She flagged a discrepancy in the vacancy projection that did not quite match the hiring timeline from the HR figures she had seen the week before. She would need to sit down with the precinct commander and the HR director before the end of the week. She added it to the list. The list was always long. It was always in motion, things being added and crossed off and returned to and revised. This was the nature of the work, and she did not find it burdensome. She found it clarifying. A long list of real problems is cleaner than a short list of managed appearances. She had spent 22 years watching departments manage appearances. She had come to Millbrook to do something different. On the day the Observer ran Paula Rigby's profile, it appeared on page 2 with the official department photograph and a headline that was neither dramatic nor particularly creative but was accurate, which she appreciated. The piece quoted her directly in several places. It gave a clear account of the first 90 days, the changes, the numbers, the direction of travel. The part about the parking garage was 4 paragraphs. Paula had written it fairly, without embellishment, without the kind of narrative framing that makes a true story feel smaller or simpler than it actually is. She had included the line about Marcus and the visitor sheet. She had included the line about sentences being finished before the information arrives. She had included what Nadia had said about Ronald Hart without removing the complexity from it. She had included the line about what bothered her. That it did not surprise her. That line ran in a few other places after the Observer piece came out, in a regional news roundup, in a policing industry newsletter, in a short post by someone who had read the piece and found that particular sentence the truest thing they had seen about the subject in a long time. Nadia did not read any of them. She had a Thursday morning full of meetings. She had the HR discrepancy to resolve. She had the 3rd open internal review case to keep moving. She had a community meeting in the Western Precinct that evening, the 2nd in a series that Carol Barnett had organized and was running well. She had work. She went and did it. And on a Friday that looked exactly like all the other Fridays, 3 months and a handful of days after she had arrived at this building in a worn gray hoodie with a folder under her arm, and sat quietly in a lobby while a receptionist decided she was not worth full attention, Marcus Cole left a sealed envelope on Claire's desk addressed to Nadia Osei, Chief of Police. Inside was a handwritten note, 3 sentences. It said that he had been thinking for a long time about how he had behaved that first morning. It said he was sorry. It said he was not sure the apology meant anything, but he needed to send it. Claire brought it in at the end of the day. Nadia read it. She read it once. She folded it back along its original crease and held it for a moment. She did not frame it. She put it in the top drawer of her desk, on the left side, where she kept a small number of things that were true and important and worth returning to occasionally, not to dwell on them, but to remember that people are capable of more than their first moment suggests. She closed the drawer. She picked up the Eastern Precinct file. She kept working. That was who she was. That was all she had ever needed to be. A woman who walked into the room, did the work, and kept going, through every lobby that could not be bothered to offer her a visitor sheet, through every conference room that pointed its energy in the wrong direction, through every parking garage and fluorescent light and reflexive laugh and assumption made before the information arrived. She had never needed anyone to announce her. She had never needed a room to be ready for her. She arrived. She got to work. The room eventually always caught up.